The television courtroom had never witnessed such pure, unfiltered disrespect. The words, "You son of a b***" hung in the air like poison gas, and for 8 eternal seconds, absolute silence gripped Judge Judy's courtroom. Victoria Whitmore, a 52-year-old socialite dripping in diamonds and designer labels, stood frozen in horrified realization of what had just escaped her lips. Her perfectly manicured hand flew to her mouth, but it was far too late. The damage was done, captured on camera, recorded for eternity, and about to explode across every social media platform on Earth. What this entitled rich woman didn't know was that Judge Judy had been waiting for exactly this moment. Hidden in a manila folder on her desk was a criminal history so damning, so perfectly aligned with Victoria's arrogant behavior, that it would transform this courtroom confrontation into the most viral moment in daytime television history. Within 24 hours, this clip would rack up 50 million views. Within a week, Victoria Whitmore would lose everything she held dear. Her career, her reputation, her marriage, her entire carefully constructed life of privilege and prestige would crumble to dust, all because she made the fatal mistake of disrespecting America's toughest judge. But let's rewind to the beginning, to the moment Victoria strutted into that courtroom with the kind of confidence that only comes from decades of buying your way out of consequences. Victoria Whitmore wasn't just wealthy. She was the kind of rich that made other rich people feel poor. Her Chanel suit cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. The Birkin bag clutched in her perfectly tanned hands carried a price tag of $15,000. The diamonds glittering at her throat, wrists, and fingers represented a combined value of $80,000, worn casually like costume jewelry because to Victoria, that's exactly what they were. She was the president of the most exclusive country club in her Connecticut hometown, a woman who organized charity galas where the tickets alone cost $5,000 per plate, a real estate mogul who specialized in multi-million-dollar estates for the ultra-wealthy. She was, by all appearances, a pillar of her community, a success story, someone who had made it to the very top of the social ladder and looked down on everyone below with barely concealed contempt. Across from her sat Marcus Johnson, and the contrast couldn't have been more stark. Marcus was 28 years old, a black contractor who had built his small business from nothing through hard work, integrity, and craftsmanship that spoke for itself. He wore his best suit, purchased specifically for this court appearance, and clutched a folder full of documentation with hands that still bore the calluses of honest labor. He had served 2 tours overseas as a combat engineer, come home with a business degree earned through night classes, and started his contracting company with a $10,000 small business loan and a dream of being his own boss. For the past 3 years he'd been building a reputation for quality work at fair prices, slowly growing his client list through word of mouth and genuine excellence. The case seemed straightforward enough on paper. Marcus had completed a luxury bathroom renovation at Victoria's estate, a job that included custom Italian marble, gold-plated fixtures, and intricate tile work that had taken him 3 weeks of meticulous labor to perfect. The contract was clear, signed by both parties, for $12,500 upon completion. Marcus had finished the work 2 months ago. Victoria had inspected it, praised it in writing through multiple text messages, and then simply refused to pay. When Marcus followed up politely, she ignored his calls. When he sent invoices, she threw them away. When he finally threatened legal action, she laughed and told him to try it, confident that a working-class contractor could never afford to fight someone of her wealth and status in court. Victoria's opening statement was a masterclass in condescension wrapped in false politeness. She spoke slowly as if explaining something to a child, her voice dripping with the kind of sweetness that barely masked pure venom. "Your Honor, I hired Mr. Johnson because I believe in giving opportunities to people who are trying to better themselves. I wanted to help him build his little business." The way she said little business made it sound like a lemonade stand run by children. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, letting her dig her own grave with words. Victoria continued, warming to her performance, clearly believing she was winning over the courtroom with her charitable image. Unfortunately, the quality of work simply didn't meet the standards expected for a property of my caliber. My estate is valued at $8.5 million, and I cannot have substandard workmanship representing my home. She said this with a slight shake of her head, as if deeply disappointed by Marcus's failure to live up to her impossible expectations. Judge Judy's eyes narrowed slightly, a warning sign that regular viewers knew meant trouble was brewing. "Ms. Whitmore, do you have any documentation showing that the work was substandard?" Victoria waved her hand dismissively, the diamonds on her wrist catching the courtroom lights. "Your Honor, these things are obvious to anyone with refined taste. It's not something you can necessarily document. The implication hung heavy in the air. Judge Judy wasn't someone with refined taste. Judge Judy couldn't possibly understand the standards of the wealthy elite. It was an insult delivered with a smile, and it landed like a slap. Marcus leaned forward, his voice respectful but firm when Judge Judy turned to him. Your Honor, I have the signed contract stating all specifications. I have photographs of the completed work. I have text messages from Ms. Whitmore calling the bathroom absolutely stunning and saying it exceeded her expectations. He pulled out his phone, showing a text dated just 3 days after completion. The message was clear and enthusiastic, with Victoria writing, "Marcus, this is absolutely beautiful. You've transformed the space. I'm so impressed with your attention to detail. Thank you for such incredible work." Judge Judy took the phone, read the message, and looked back at Victoria with an expression that could freeze lava. "Ms. Whitmore, this text message says the work exceeded your expectations. How do you explain that?" Victoria's smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered, letting out an exaggerated sigh that suggested she was dealing with someone who simply didn't understand how the world worked. "Judge, you clearly don't understand how these situations work in luxury home improvement. Sometimes you have to be polite to the workers while they're still on your property. It's just good manners." The courtroom gasped audibly. She had just referred to Marcus as the workers, as if he were somehow less than human, just labor to be managed and dismissed. Judge Judy's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. "Excuse me? I don't understand." It was a challenge, a dare for Victoria to double down on her disrespect. And double down she did. Victoria leaned forward slightly, her tone taking on the patient condescension of someone explaining basic arithmetic to a particularly slow student. "With all due respect, Judge, you're from Brooklyn. My estate is worth $8.5 million. We simply have different standards when it comes to luxury renovations. I don't expect you to understand the nuances of high-end design and craftsmanship." The silence that followed was so profound you could hear the courtroom's air conditioning humming. Even the camera operators seemed to freeze. Victoria had just insulted Judge Judy's background, her taste, her intelligence, and her ability to understand basic contract law, all in one breathtakingly arrogant statement. The audience's collective gasp sounded like a wave crashing against rocks. Judge Judy's expression transformed from stern to absolutely lethal. Her voice, when it came, was ice-cold and razor-sharp. "I see. So because I grew up in Brooklyn and didn't inherit millions, I couldn't possibly understand quality workmanship or legal contracts. Is that your position, Ms. Whitmore?" Victoria, incredibly, didn't recognize the trap closing around her. She actually smiled, as if Judge Judy was finally beginning to see her point. "I'm just saying that we come from very different worlds, Your Honor. What might seem impressive to some people simply doesn't meet the standards of my social circle." Judge Judy turned to Marcus, her voice softening considerably. "Mr. Johnson, please walk me through the contract specifications and your completion of this project." Marcus stood, grateful for the opportunity to present his case properly. He laid out photographs of the bathroom renovation, each one showing meticulous craftsmanship. The Italian marble was laid in a perfect herringbone pattern, the grout lines razor-straight and uniform. The gold-plated fixtures gleamed like jewelry, installed with precision that would make a watchmaker proud. The custom vanity he had built by hand featured dovetail joints and a finish so smooth it looked like glass. He presented the signed contract, which detailed every specification, every material, every measurement. Victoria's signature was clear at the bottom, along with a clause stating that final payment would be due within 10 days of completion and approval. "And Ms. Whitmore approved the work?" Judge Judy asked, though she already knew the answer. Marcus pulled out more text messages, a whole conversation thread spanning 3 days after the project's completion. Victoria had sent multiple messages praising every detail, asking for his business card to refer to her friends, even suggesting he should raise his prices because his work was worth more. She had taken photos of the bathroom and posted them on her social media with the caption, "Finally found a contractor who understands luxury. Absolutely obsessed with my new master bath." The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, and made Victoria's claim of substandard work look like exactly what it was, a lie designed to avoid payment. Judge Judy pressed further. "And after this approval, this praise, what happened when you requested payment?" Marcus's voice tightened with the memory of frustration and disrespect. "She stopped returning my calls, Your Honor. I sent the invoice as specified in the contract. Nothing. I called, left messages. Nothing. I finally went to her property in person, and she had her housekeeper tell me she wasn't home, even though I could see her car in the driveway. After 6 weeks, I sent a formal demand letter. She texted me back saying, and I quote, "I've changed my mind about paying you. The work wasn't worth $12,500. Maybe if you were a more established contractor, but I'm not paying premium prices to someone's little startup business." The courtroom erupted in angry murmurs. Judge Judy raised her hand for silence, but her eyes were locked on Victoria like a predator watching prey that had just stumbled into the open. "Ms. Whitmore, do you deny sending that text message?" Victoria shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her confident facade developing visible cracks. "I may have said something like that, but you have to understand I felt taken advantage of. You overcharged me. I could have gotten that work done for half the price." Judge Judy's response was swift and cutting. "But you didn't get it done for half the price. You signed a contract agreeing to $12,500. You approved the work in writing. You praised it publicly. And then you simply decided you didn't want to pay. Is that correct?" Victoria's frustration was building, her carefully maintained composure slipping like a mask in the rain. "Judge, this is getting ridiculous. I'm a respected member of my community. I've donated millions to charity. I employ dozens of people through my real estate business. Are you really going to side with some random contractor over someone like me?" The phrase "someone like me" hung in the air, laden with implications about class, status, and who deserved to be believed. Judge Judy leaned back in her chair, and the slight smile that crossed her face was the kind that would make wise people very, very nervous. "Someone like you," Judge Judy repeated slowly. "That's an interesting phrase, Ms. Whitmore. Let's talk about exactly what someone like you means." She reached for the manila folder on her desk, the one that had been sitting there since the beginning, waiting for its moment. Victoria's eyes fixed on that folder, and for the first time, genuine fear flickered across her face. "Before you walked into my courtroom today, I did something I don't do for every case. I ran a comprehensive background check. And what I found was absolutely fascinating." Judge Judy opened the folder with deliberate slowness, her eyes scanning the top page before looking up at Victoria with an expression of barely contained fury. "Mrs. Victoria Whitmore, formerly Victoria and Castellano. You changed your name 15 years ago through a legal process. Why?" Victoria's face went pale, the expensive foundation suddenly looking like a mask against her whitening skin. Victoria's voice came out as barely a whisper, trembling with the realization that her carefully buried past was about to be excavated on national television. "That's personal, Your Honor. It has nothing to do with this case." Judge Judy's laugh was short and devoid of any humor. "Oh, but it has everything to do with this case, Ms. Whitmore. Because what I'm about to reveal shows a 30-year pattern of behavior that explains exactly why we're here today." She pulled out the first document, holding it up so the cameras could capture it clearly. "At age 23 you were arrested and charged with theft and fraud. You were working as an assistant manager at a boutique in Manhattan, and you stole $35,000 from the owner over a 6-month period. When confronted, you claimed you were simply borrowing money that you deserved because you worked hard and weren't paid enough." The courtroom exploded in gasps and shocked murmurs. Marcus's eyes widened in disbelief. Victoria's hands gripped the edge of the defendant's table so hard her knuckles turned white. "Those charges were dropped," she stammered desperately. Judge Judy's voice cut through like a blade. "No, they weren't dropped. You accepted a plea deal. Suspended sentence and probation in exchange for paying full restitution. That's a criminal conviction, Ms. Whitmore." Before Victoria could respond, Judge Judy pulled out another document. 6 years later, at age 29 you were arrested again. Check fraud. You wrote bad checks totaling $18,000 to luxury stores across New York and Connecticut. Designer clothes, jewelry, handbags. You were living a lifestyle you couldn't afford and thought you could get away with it. Once again you avoided jail time by paying restitution through your family's money. Victoria was shaking now, tears beginning to form in her eyes, but Judge Judy showed no mercy. At age 35, you were sued by a wedding planner for refusing to pay $22,000 for services rendered. Sound familiar? You claimed her work was beneath your standards despite emails proving you approved everything. The court ordered you to pay. Instead, you declared bankruptcy to avoid the judgment, leaving a small business owner destroyed while you walked away. The folder seemed bottomless, each page revealing another layer of Victoria's true character. Judge Judy pulled out a police report and her voice grew even colder. And then at age 41, you were arrested for DUI and assault on a police officer. The officer was a black woman. According to the report, you called her a racial slur when she pulled you over, and when she attempted to place you under arrest, You physically attacked her. You paid a $50,000 fine and used expensive attorneys to get the record sealed. The courtroom was in absolute chaos now, with audience members shouting in anger and disbelief. Victoria was sobbing openly, her designer makeup running in dark streaks down her face. "You had no right to unseal those records," she cried desperately. Judge Judy's voice thundered through the courtroom. "I had every right. Because this case isn't about a bathroom renovation, Ms. Whitmore. It's about a predator who has spent 3 decades using wealth and privilege to abuse service workers, minorities, and anyone she considers beneath her." Judge Judy then revealed the most damning evidence of all. Her research team had contacted 14 other contractors Victoria had hired over the past 5 years. Every single one was a minority. Every single one had completed work that Victoria praised in writing. Every single one had to sue, file liens, or simply give up to get paid. She had systematically defrauded these small businesses out of over $200,000 collectively. Judge Judy turned to Marcus, her voice filled with righteous anger. "Mr. Johnson, you served 2 tours overseas defending this country. You came home, earned your degree, and built an honest business through hard work and integrity. And this woman thought she could use her wealth and your race to cheat you out of money you earned." Marcus was crying now, overwhelmed by finally being heard and believed after months of being dismissed and disrespected. Judge Judy's gavel came down with the force of thunder, silencing the chaotic courtroom. Her voice rang out with absolute authority and moral clarity. "Ms. Whitmore, you are not just a liar. You are a predator in designer clothing, a criminal who has hidden behind wealth and sealed records for 3 decades. This ends today." Victoria looked up through tear-streaked makeup, her entire body trembling as Judge Judy delivered her verdict. "You will pay Marcus Johnson $12,500 for the contracted work you approved and praised. You will pay an additional $15,000 in punitive damages for the emotional distress and racial discrimination you subjected him to. You will pay $8,000 in legal fees. Total judgment, $35,500, payable immediately." But Judge Judy wasn't finished. She leaned forward, her eyes burning with fury that transcended mere legal proceedings. "Furthermore, I am referring this case to the FBI for investigation into pattern racketeering. You have systematically defrauded minority contractors across state lines for years. That is a federal crime under the Civil Rights Act." Victoria's scream of "No, please," was cut off by the gavel slamming again. Judge Judy turned to face the camera directly, speaking not just to her courtroom but to millions of viewers. "I want every contractor, every small business owner watching to know this. Victoria Whitmore is a fraud and a racist who targets hardworking minorities because she believes they can't fight back. She has hidden behind money and lawyers for 30 years. Not anymore. This footage, this evidence, is being sent to every news network, the Better Business Bureau, and every organization she's associated with. The world will know exactly who you are." Victoria was escorted from the courtroom by the bailiff, her sobs echoing through the hall as the audience erupted in a standing ovation. Marcus collapsed into his chair, tears of relief streaming down his face as justice, real justice, finally found him. Within hours, the clip exploded across every social media platform. 50 million views in the first 24 hours. The hashtag #RichKarenExposed trended for 5 straight days. Victoria's country club revoked her membership. Her charity boards removed her. Her real estate firm terminated her contract. 8 luxury clients publicly fired her. Her husband filed for divorce within the week, citing unbearable public humiliation. The FBI opened their investigation. 23 additional contractors came forward with identical stories. A class action lawsuit was filed for $1.2 million. Victoria was forced to sell her $8.5 million estate to pay settlements and legal fees. She moved out of state, completely destroyed, her name forever synonymous with entitled racism and criminal fraud. Meanwhile, Marcus's business exploded with supportive customers. He went from struggling to fully booked for 6 months. Judge Judy personally referred clients to him. He opened a second location and hired 5 employees, all minorities who had faced similar discrimination. His story became a symbol of standing up against injustice, proving that truth and courage can defeat wealth and privilege. If this story of justice served moved you, smash that subscribe button right now. Hit the like button if you believe entitled rich people deserve to be exposed for their crimes. Comment below what you think should happen to people who use their wealth to exploit hardworking minorities. Share this video with someone who needs to see that karma is real and justice will always prevail. Turn on notifications because we're bringing you more moments when bullies get exactly what they deserve. Remember, in Judge Judy's courtroom, Your money doesn't matter, your status doesn't matter. All that matters is truth, respect, and justice. And Victoria Whitmore learned that lesson in the most devastating way possible.